Hey, hey,
Hey,
hey, hi. So good afternoon. So good to see you.
thank you.
This time is a 0 kilometer dialogue, so no consumption.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's
Well,
the advantage.
well, the bad one is that we cannot share as the last time a fantastic dinner in Parma, eating so well.
Yes.
But next time we'll do it. So thank you for your time. It's very kind of you. Uh, I was in dialogue with Mario Cucinella since a few seconds ago, and it was very interesting. I explain you why we are talking about sustainability. So just to give you a frame,
Okay.
few months ago, our friends of the Rubner Haus, which are, as you know, specialized in wooden construction, asked me to work with them on dialogues on architecture about keywords, central keywords for the discussion about architecture. So during September, we will have 3 meetings about sustainability, quality, and sociability, let's say sociality. And at the end of the month, we will open a kind of a small kiosk given by Rubner to the city of Milan as a gift to the city. So there will be a party at the end of the month where those 3 discussions will bring to a real event in the city of Milan. So
Great.
thank you for being part of this large discussion and for your time. As I did before, I will introduce you just for a while because everybody knows you, but it's, since there's always somebody who doesn't know things, so it's good. But you are one of the founders of Transsolar, which is an amazing history. I mean, every time I come back to Transsolar Engineering, I discover a world because you start with a small office in 1993, and now you are a reality with offices in Stuttgart, Munich, Paris, and New York, as far as I know. I don't know if you opened something else, and I
No,
don't know.
not yet.
Not yet. Okay, good. And what I think is very interesting is that your office is not just an engineering office. It's a place where engineers, architects, and climatologists work together to provide quality on comfort and less consumption of energies. So bringing, let's say, all the thematic on sustainability as part of the discourse of on architecture. And for me, it's very interesting because you are not just a technical consultant, but your office works daily with the designer and the planners to provide a different point of view on the way we design the space, no?
Yes.
Is it correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No. Well described. Because certainly at certain points we are very strongly influencing the design. Because if a client comes and says he wants to have a low carbon footprint building, then this demands as well a certain reaction on the architecture. And sometimes, and that's what luckily I was teaching for 15 years, so I could with the students work on this, because this is a conflict. That's a conflict sometimes even between aesthetics in other functions, and sustainability is now an additional function architects have to be able to integrate into their design.
Yeah, well, this is very interesting what you say, combining, let's say, sustainability and aesthetics, because if you think in the 60s and 70s in Germany mostly, the idea of sustainability and climate change became a kind of a new style, no? So, which was a kind of naive, but also was very interesting. I remember Frei Otto was one of the first real architects who went in the discourse in a very interesting way, But then something disappeared, and now the discussion on climatic change is entering directly into the discourse on architecture. So it's not a style, but generate a kind of aesthetic which is more complex.
Right. In a certain way, I would say, okay, there was Stefan Benisch once mentioned that we haven't found yet the architectural style of sustainability, but I would disagree because I think there is no one style.
I agree with you.
There are different solutions, and I think it challenges again the creativity of architects to integrate this additional demands in their design. And okay, you may, in this kind of whole grouping of functions, architecture in any case is trying to integrate into one design, you have an additional feature. And it's clear, if you take sustainability very tough, you would say the non-built environment is the best sustainable one, then architecture disappears.
Well, you're right, but sometimes, I mean, how many times you have entered in an old house which was fresh in summer and warm in winter, well climatized with a good moving of air, just a simple house, no? So
yes,
what is more sustainable than this kind of architecture? I mean, this good silent architecture sometimes is so much clever in terms of a relationship, physical, and a relationship with the surroundings.
Yeah,
no?
the builders, the traditional builders, which were architects and builders in the same person, and the tradition of local craftsmanship, local relation, they knew their climate, they knew their impact. So in a certain way, it developed local kind of answers, which worked quite well. Now, nowadays, okay, sometimes if these old buildings are in a dense city and you suddenly enter into whatever, the heat waves we see now having 40-degree in Germany, we haven't had it 10 years ago. So climate change is happening. And this is where we, in a certain way, as well need adaptations, even on existing buildings, because they worked for 100 years, but suddenly the boundary conditions changed. And I think this is as well a very strong demand for our cities, that they should be able to buffer some of these effects, because having, like in Tokyo nowadays, 7 degrees warmer than outside, buildings are in a certain way unable to respond to this. So our cities have to get more green, more shading, more evaporative cooling, less traffic, less heat.
Yeah. No, but I mean, no, you're right, and probably what we lived in the last 8 months, let's say the COVID pandemic, was teaching hardly to everybody this kind of condition, no? I mean, we were all dreaming green outside of our window when we were locked down inside the house.
Right, right. On the other side, what is as well interesting, we are discussing nowadays on open air schools.
Yeah.
Because especially now, when the temperature is fine, that's perfect. There is no infection, there's much better ventilation. So I think it brought back a certain aspect on quality, and fresh air is a big quality. And it's so interesting, we are now discussing with clients to say, oh, recirculation of air in the connection of COVID is gone, because everybody only talks about fresh air supply and hopefully not mixing, displacement, ventilation. So kind of lessons we tried to teach people for years now suddenly got into people, because they understand, okay, if this bad air which smells is as well transporting the virus, then this is dangerous.
Yeah. No, it's fun. You're right, because I mean the idea of fresh air. If you imagine that today in the LEED gold and platinum building, you cannot open window. I mean, it's I remember there was a very famous building in Milan which is LEED platinum now, and the architect was very proud of it. Then I came to interview the people inside, and they all hated it because they cannot open the window.
Right.
And they said, but it was the only way to keep a LEED platinum. So the paradox is that to be LEED, you cannot breathe. And today, with this kind of situation, it's a kind of upside down world, no?
Which people learned, and then as well to enjoy walking through your city. If you locked down and have to stay inside, now regaining again the quality of your city, which then even like cities like Barcelona, and I'm sure as well Milan, were not as crowded as they normally are. So you could one kind of recover your city or refine your city for yourself and enjoy the quality of an urban space as well, in respect of being out there and breathing. Less traffic.
Well, this is something that is very evident now because since we have less pressure of people not traveling, our
Yes.
cities are more empty. It's, I mean, Milano, Rome, Venice, Florence. It's amazing because, and it's very interesting because normal people say, you know what? I don't understand why, but in the last period, I feel better in my city. It's more livable. There's less traffic, and you look at them and say, yes, there is 30% less of people, no, 40%
Yes.
less physical pressure of bodies, let's say, no.
Yes,
And
which is then interesting in the discussion of that. It's clear if we discuss on sustainable cities, we as well have to talk about density.
Yeah.
Because living density in our cities has all gone down. People are consuming more space, so there are less people in the same size of city. And for the future, we need to know that we have to get more people in our cities, but not building new buildings, but increasing density. And this will be an interesting, in Switzerland, there have been a strong public discussion in Basel because people were kind of voting against more people entering to the city.
Really?
But if you look up the numbers from the 60s, Basel had much more people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and I think people have to find out, okay, in Venice, it's clear. If you get rid of all the international visitors, it becomes much more livable.
Yeah.
But in other cities, I would say a more density, which is well increasing the efficiency of public transportation, the efficiency of any kind of supply system, because you have more users, you distribute it more.
Yeah.
And I think what is as well, if we get more people in the cities, they have to they will spend more time outside. Yeah. So there is more pressure on the quality of our cities to get outdoor spaces which are more livable. And I think this is the next then iteration where then in combination with more green and more shading, which on one side reduces the temperature, gets better urban spaces, which then are more used by people, because if you live denser, you spend more time outside.
Yeah. Well, this element, I mean, this key of discussion, I think, is very important because today density is seen as a problem, no? Because everybody is scared about being closer. I don't know if it's in Germany, but what I'm realizing in this period that people is more concerned about the distance, and density is became a kind of a psychological problem because you get afraid, no? So how to work on density and to let's say a change in idea of public spaces without destroying the idea of community, which is at the basis of the city, no? Because this is fundamental.
And I think it's clear. This is the biggest kind of, I would say, frightening of COVID, that destroying social distance is destroying society.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There is no way, in a certain way, for the future to live in a community without a social closeness. So, and it's quite interesting. I just was as a lecturer in Basel. In Switzerland, only if you get closer to 1.5 meter, you need to wear a mask. But they're already doing public lectures where people sit in rows, but then everybody needs to wear a mask, which is like Basel Carnival. So I see it more like, because you don't.
It was very strange for you, was it?
Yeah, you don't remember the people because you suddenly like everybody's hiding behind a mask. On the other side, it shows that this creates, again, at least a feel of a community. And I think it's clear this is absolutely dangerous if closeness in a community becomes a danger, because then suddenly I think this would destroy a society.
Yeah, because it's at the basics of every city, no? Every city has a kind of erotic value, no? They being closer to people, they being to meet them, to exchange, to also the case, no, of meeting somebody you don't know. Is part of the life in the city, no?
Right.
And it's part of the living together and the exchange and a meeting, you know?
Yeah, so, and hopefully, and I think this is as well, hopefully we will, in a certain, revalue the possibility to be closer to each other.
Yeah,
when
you're right.
Hopefully a day next year, hopefully they have the possibility to protect us against this kind of strange virus.
But listen, one of the I was very impressed by the fact that one of the new keywords that you put in your website is related to the idea of working on climate change. You know? So which is very interesting because originally it was climate engineering, monitoring, energy supply, urban design, architecture,
exactly,
and then you added climate change. You know, can you tell me more about how working on climate change? I mean, I understand it in relation to urban design, but I'm interested in a different scale of intervention. How climate change can become an element of awareness and design inside
which
our
is
way of thinking.
and it's quite interesting. I think this is as well just a parallel to COVID. In COVID, we saw that if people understand the kind of a problem, people are accepting limitations, very stringent limitations. And I think, and probably one day, and I'm at the moment, I'm as well doing a change from talking about climate change instead of talking about climate crisis, because we have, or it's more even a climate catastrophe we are facing. So this makes it more, and that at least, I think we came on it. We were asked, there's this German kind of assessment society of sustainable buildings, which came back with evaluating building on their climate neutrality for buildings. And then we said, okay, if we take it further, this is holistically, and if we then talk about cities, then we have to talk about climate change. And in the next step, we may even, I will do a lecture next week in Basel, I will talk about the climate catastrophe and what, because they still, and this is about Basel 2050, they're still talking about what could we do. And my statement, what must we, there is no could. This is gone. We missed it. So I think this is where we said, as well, in our responsibility, we are at least trying to get people aware on it. And I think this is where I think as well, the hope, let's say, people being more aware they have out of the COVID is that if we get a society and our politicians being aware, because what we saw, there were suddenly decisions made, there are suddenly billions of money available where nobody had money to do anything before. And so to create values, where suddenly, and I think this is for me was amazing, hearing that in Venice the fishes are back in the lagoon.
It's incredible.
In Istanbul they had the dolphins in the city, and in southern France they have double the population of flamingos this year, because normally the planes above the area are kind of shaking up the birds, so they miss their eggs. Now they have double the next generation than the normal year.
No, but this is I think it is very important because, but on my thinking, education is fundamental because probably the pressure must come bottom up, not up. I mean, apparently the politicians are completely they don't understand, and this, and I would say this specific historical moment as probably the worst politician ever in the world in relation to this kind of things. If you consider Turkey, United States, Brazil, I mean, all of them are considering the climate not as a problem. So the only things we can do is working hardly on education, on provocation, and a kind of social revolution to bring up. So it's and it's probably the only way we could do, because as people as you that as the data, as the numbers, as the comprehension of the whole vision are the best person possible to bring elements for us to be aware, not to be conscious about what we are living.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly why we introduced this climate change chapter, because we said we should make people, and it's wonderful to hear it back. I will tell it to my PR lady that you're following, you're being aware, and people are aware. We hear it in the responses, and
Well,
it's nice because people feel that this is something we need to act on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Probably you should switch from climate change to climate crisis, so people will so to make it more serious, no? Even more serious.
Yes.
In a way, designer is also a problem solver, so we give vision, no, to improve the solution. So I mean,
because what is interesting, change can be something positive.
That's my point. That's my point. So in a way, when it's positive, I mean, I'm a Catholic, so being Catholic when it's positive, brings you some more time. Okay, let's think about that, no? So if it's a crisis, it's like, oh, what should we do? What should we do? You know, you move from, change is like a sweetheart.
Yeah,
crisis is you fucking guy, you have to solve it.
Yes.
No, I totally agree. But one of the things that I love about your work, I mean, I'm a fan of Transsolar, but the way I discovered most of your work was through installations, no? Because installation is a kind of a way to experiment, to provoke, and to generate a kind of wow effect, but in the most clever way. When I was doing the Italian pavilion, you remember in 2010, you were with the Tetsukondo generating fog in very close to my pavilion. So I discovered you in 2010 for that, for the fog. I get lost in the fog and I discovered Transsolar. But then I discovered that you have been working with Olafur Eliasson, with Filippa Reno. The beautiful forest in Expo Milano was yours. I didn't know that. And I really loved it. I loved it. And with the Lesco video. So what does it mean for you working on installation? Because I think it's a beautiful playground for experimenting, and
exactly.
for generating
this
dialogue.
Is the point. You can do their stuff which you wouldn't be able to do in a real building, and you on the other side you are visualizing like the cloud in Venice, and we call it cloud positive, not fog, because there's
No, but I come from the south of Milano where I used to fog. So for me, it's something very positive. I love fog. I get lost.
Okay.
So for me, it's very romantic and sentimental.
Okay, so I think this is just the cloud is floating in a layer which makes air stratification and humidity stratification visible. And I think then having the ramp where people could walk up and then suddenly feel the change in temperature, the change in humidity, being aware, which is not the real cloud, but it makes, in a certain way, our science that we play with this stratification visual. And I think that's the point where we love to do it. And it was, I don't know if you have seen, the last one was in the Louvre Abu Dhabi, where they had this glass box with a cloud in.
Yeah, I only saw images. I'm sorry, but
And in this case, they had even a kind of a perfume in the top layer.
Wow.
So it was kind of distributing, or as well, in addition to the air quality, we could add a smell, which suddenly you came up the stair, and suddenly, in addition to temperature and humidity, you suddenly a smell was appearing, and if you walk down, it disappeared.
But I think that is also a very interesting statement, which is also very much connected to the work of people like Olafur Eliasson or artists that tells you that climate is a space where you live. So you move from the idea, which is very theoretical, that climate is something around you but you don't see. But when you do this kind of installation, you transform climate into a space where you live physically with your body,
Right.
So I remember the ramp very well, and to live and to experience what you are telling me meant that you had to walk slow. And this is very important, because to slow down means to experience better, to understand, So it's also a way to provoke people to slow down and to understand the way you are.
This is absolutely, again, a very positive consequence of COVID, because people had to slow down. There was no way to do your crazy travel schedules again. People are now mostly traveling in Germany by train, which takes like 6 hours to Berlin.
Yeah.
But instead of sitting in a plane, they take the train. So which maybe as well will lead to a bit more contemplation, a bit more thinking. So I think that people may learn, hopefully people learn that there is a quality aside of what we are always thinking to rush and to need to achieve.
Yeah, you know, during the period of the lockdown, Milano was very strong. We had a 3 months lockdown, and one of the only place where you could meet somebody was the newsstand, which is very interesting because newsstand was in crisis. Everybody was abandoning it because no one was buying newspaper, no? But buying newspaper was one of the few possibilities to get out of the house. So I used to go and buy newspaper every day to buy food, pay newspaper and bread, I remember. And the newsstand suddenly became what it was originally, was a kind of a social place, no?
Social media place.
So the fact that now in few weeks Rubner will give this newsstand in the city of Milano, I think it's a very nice sign of a way of coming back to some good things that are part of our community life, no?
Right, and that such a location can become like an initiator of communication, of exchange, of knowledge. So gain, I think that's quite definitely I think this is a very good kind of effort to do in our times.
It's a kind of nice small statement, let's say.
Yes,
which is necessary. We need a statement this moment, and we need your work. So, Matthias, thank you so much for everything, and I'm looking forward to see the next installation. Do you have one next to
let me think. Okay, we're doing for the expo in Dubai, which was now delayed 1 year. We do an outdoor cloud for the Baden-Württemberg pavilion.
Wow! So
you will see it there.
So I have to finally to take a plane finally to go.
Okay, that's in a year's time. So
we can do it. We can do it. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Wonderful.
Grazie. Bye bye. Ciao, Matthias.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.